So I'm in the shower and I'm completely naked. I have my phone in my hand and I already know what's about to happen. You know that battle that happens in your mind before you go in there and you're like, no, but I shouldn't do it. And then there's that feeling, that moment where you're standing there and you just give up. You give in. It's that moment of defeat where you're like, fine, just one more day. Just one more relapse. But in the back of your mind, you know that 5 minutes later, you're gonna feel fucking guilty. You're gonna feel this deep regret in your chest. You're gonna look back and be like, what the fuck was I doing? So I'm in the bathroom with my phone pretending to be taking a shower or something. And you already know what I'm looking up. I find my way to the hub and I'm scrolling. I'm scrolling and scrolling, trying to find the best video possible. And eventually I find a video. And my eyes are glued to this video. And the exact moment I release, I'm filled with shame and guilt and anger. You know this feeling where you genuinely feel like nothing. You feel empty. You feel like a shell of a human. You can imagine just this primal human energy, this behavior turning from lust to sorrow to shame. Me just standing there like, what the fuck am I doing? But for some reason this day I decided I wanted to suffer a little bit more. And so I'm back on my phone scrolling through other videos and I click on another one. And it's like my body and my mind wasn't prepared for it. It was like, again already? And my eyes are locked back onto the video and I'm trying to distract myself from the shame and the regret and that pain that I feel. I feel worthless, but I'm still fapping. And again, it's over and I have that same feeling. But guess what? Today, I wasn't getting up. I was going for the three-peat. I just wanted to completely waste myself and feel like I was worthless that day. And so I'm there again looking for another video. I click on one and I'm fapping again. And I'm sitting there like a fucking monkey that can't think for himself, that feels all this shame and these terrible feelings, but I just keep going. And again, I release and it's like I'm fucking shooting blanks at that point, bro. And you can imagine what it feels like to come out of that trance and how much of a shell of a human you feel like. You feel like a primal animal. I didn't feel like a human at that point, standing there filled with shame and regret in the cold. And imagine what it's like to go from fapping and relapsing 3 times in a row to walking out of that bathroom and having to look your family in the eyes and having to go about your day like everything's normal and that you're fine. I remember I just lied down on my bed. I felt soulless. I felt empty. I didn't feel like I deserved anything. And I know that you go through and that you know this same pain, which is why I'm making this video to give you a tool, a guide to navigating and understanding NoFap and understanding this addiction and porn and all of these different things that have been weighing down on your life, been sucking your soul away. So now let's get into the meat of this video, the last NoFap video you will ever watch. Today I'm going to be explaining NoFap to you in a way that you've probably never heard anyone talk about it before. I think every guy can relate to this. When you figure out about NoFap, when you've been doing it for a while, you figured out about porn, about fapping, and you went down this rabbit hole when you're just a curious little kid, you had no idea what you were doing to yourself. When you figured out that it was bad for you, at that point, everything became so much worse. You became so much more regretful every single time you relapsed. You felt this like extreme pain where you couldn't stop doing the thing that you now knew was bad for you, that you now knew that you wanted to get rid of. And it just felt like you couldn't get rid of it. You just couldn't stop relapsing. Every single day you felt terrible about yourself. You felt like this shell of a human because you were giving into your primal desires, giving into lust even when you didn't want to. But honestly, NoFap in many cases does more harm than good. And there's just a lot of bullshit going around, a lot of things making it more complicated than it needs to be. You start to view it as this huge gaping hole, this problem in your life, and maybe you started to make it a bigger problem than it actually was. And NoFap makes you think about the problem more. It makes you kind of obsess over it. And today I want you to come out of this video understanding NoFap on a more basic level because it really isn't that complicated, just everybody makes it more complicated. The addiction itself, fapping itself, watching porn, it's all just a habit. And today I'm going to explain it in a way that makes it so much easier to understand. It's a visual representation of what's going on. So imagine that each of these marbles is a day. A day where you either did or didn't fap, where you did or didn't watch porn. And for a long time, there was none of this. It was just a blank slate. You didn't know about porn, you didn't know about fapping, you didn't know about any of this. You were just living your life like a normal kid, like you should. But then one day you stumble across something, maybe some random video, maybe you click some link, maybe you search it up because someone told you about it. And so that's the first day you end up watching porn. The first day that you end up fapping. And at this time, when you just figure out about all this stuff, you stumble across it as a curious little kid, you don't know that doing it is bad for you. You don't know that you shouldn't be doing it. You have no clue what NoFap is. You have no idea that the habit you're building is going to turn into an addiction. And your feelings, your horniness, whatever, it overpowers everything and you just keep doing it every single day. You build this habit, this chain of fapping and watching porn every single day. And so you just keep adding the marbles. Day after day, you just keep putting them in there. And yeah, maybe you feel a little bit guilty or whatever. You feel like, oh, this is probably something wrong. You never really think about it too much, and you never think about not doing it. You just keep building and building and building the habit. And you keep building it and you keep building it until you have so many marbles stacked up into this habit, stacked up into the yes of doing this habit. And then one day you stumble across a YouTube video, maybe a post, some self-improvement content, and they're talking about this thing called NoFap. And so you watch that video and then you watch the next and the next and the next, and you feel terrible because you realize that the thing that you've been doing for so long is actually bad for you. All the people say, oh no, it actually lowers your chances to get testicular cancer. It's actually fine. You should do it every single day. It's good to, express your feelings. Like, bro, shut up. For so long, you were lied to and told, no, it's completely fine. And only at the point where you have done the habit for so long, chained together so many days of fapping and watching porn, that's when you realize that it's an addiction and that it's bad for you. And that's when things get more painful. It actually gets worse before it gets better. Because you want to so bad after figuring out about NoFap. You want to not do it. You don't want to do the habit anymore. You know it's bad for you. You know it's affecting your mental health. You know it's not good for you. You know it's affecting your presence. But you just can't stop yourself. You just can't say no. You want to put the marble in the jar of not fapping, of not watching porn. You want to break the habit, but since you have so many marbles stacked up in here, you've built the habit so much, it's really easy for you to just add another one to the yes. Another relapse, another day of watching porn, but this time you feel shittier, you feel worse, because you know that it's not good for you. And every single day is a battle. Most days, you still relapse, but then some days you don't. You relapse, and then you don't. But then you relapse again, and you relapse again, and you relapse again. And this cycle happens over and over and over. And the only way to put the odds in your favor is to make it so that the marbles in this jar outweigh this jar. And that you chain together a lot of wins with barely any losses in a certain amount of time. That's the only way that you break this habit. That's what it is. It's a habit that you're doing. And because you've built it for so long, it's going to be difficult to break and it's going to take time. I first want to explain something to all of you, especially if you're watching this video and you're just figuring out that the habit is actually bad for you. I want you to understand how you actually make progress. Because for some reason, a lot of people think that you need to have some 1,000-day streak, some impossibly long streak of not doing the habit. And some people think that they should be able to get a really, really long streak and just stack marbles and marbles and marbles into not doing the habit, even though they've been doing it for so long and every single day they've been fapping. They think they can just break it in a week, in 1 month of trying. But I want to go back to the idea of the streak, because that's how a lot of people think they make progress on NoFap. They think that if they stack together a bunch of days in a row where they don't do it, day after day after day, they just don't do it. They keep putting the marbles in here. If they string together a bunch of those days, eventually they'll be free. But if they break one day, their streak is over. Their progress is gone. They've relapsed. Oh, it's all over. It's all over. You should just relapse again and again because your progress is gone. That is so stupid. Marbles cannot be taken out of either of the jars, which is a good and a bad thing, because the habit that you've built up for a long time, fapping and watching porn, all the marbles that you've put in there, they stay in there. Because the longer that you do the habit, the more days that you put in there, and the more marbles that are in here, the harder the habit is going to be to break. That's just how it works. That's just how habits work. If you've been meditating every single day, 365 days out of the entire year, 20 minutes every single day, it's probably going to be pretty easy to meditate on the 366th day for 20 minutes. And it's going to be pretty hard actually to not do it. But since marbles can't be taken out of either one, that means all of your wins, all of your days that you don't do it, they stay in there. That progress is still there. When I show this to you visually, it just looks stupid as fuck. If you were to have a really long streak, let's say you have like whatever, a 7-day, 20-day streak, and you just keep adding the marbles in here, and you keep doing it, and you just keep doing it, and you keep getting wins, and then one day, something really bad happens in your life, whatever, you're trying to cope, and then you just relapse. If your idea of progress lies within the streak, what happens is all of this progress in your mind is gone. All of it's gone. You've made absolutely no progress. You're back on day 0. There's no marbles in this jar. The habit of not doing it has been completely reset. And in your mind, that's completely true when you think that the streak matters. And so that's what actually happens. It's unsustainable. It doesn't work because most people aren't just going to be able to quit cold turkey, never fap again, never watch porn again. That's not how it's going to work for 99.9% of guys. That progress is still in there, but if you think in terms of the streak, it's all gone. Let me explain to you how you really make progress on NoFap, how you really should be tracking your progress, because this is how it really works. Progress is measured in versus how many times you've done it versus how many times you've not. It's basically like the frequency, the ratio of fapping and not fapping. You just want to tip that ratio in your favor. So if you look at it from a certain time frame, like let's say a month, and let's say in a month you relapse only 3 times. In order to make progress, you want to the next month only relapse 2 times, and then 1 time, and then maybe once every 2 months, and then maybe once every 5 5 months, and then you, whatever, never do it again. So that's how you make progress. You track it in terms of how many times you are doing it and how many times you aren't in a certain time frame. And each time you go into a new time frame, a new month, a new year, you want to be doing it better. You want to have a better ratio. And in the end, what you really want is there not to really be a ratio anymore, where on a month-to-month, year-to-year basis, you don't relapse. Every single day, you don't relapse. So this is what progress on NoFap actually looks like. If we're looking in a certain time frame, let's say 4 days, and out of those 4 days, you relapse 1 time, and you don't fap, don't watch porn 3 times. And these marbles, I think I said earlier, these are days, by the way. So you kind of keep track of progress in terms of days, months, and years. And so if you keep doing that, relapse once every 4 days and not every 3 days, you can see how this starts to stack up. The days that you don't fap outweigh the days that you do in that time frame of 4 days. Still, overall, over the entire time you've been doing this habit, this still outweighs this one. The yes category still outweighs the no category, but over time, that's the key here. This takes time. You are going to slowly build up this no category until it takes over the yes one. And that's basically how you win. Because whichever one has more marbles, more days in it, that's the one you're more likely to do. And really, when you get to that point where they're like equal, you've pretty much broken the habit. For the amount of days that you've done it after you figured out about the habit, you have an equal amount of days that you haven't done it. So you're kind of gaining that power, that discipline over time as you gain more marbles in here. And this brings up a couple of things that I've thought about recently, which I like to call the paradoxes of NoFap. And this applies to other things in self-improvement, partially because you're weak and you don't really have much discipline. But the reason that it's really difficult is because you've been building this habit for so long. You've been putting so many marbles into the yes. So when it is the most difficult and when you have no experience not doing it, fighting it, that's when you are at your weakest. Because this habit has been bringing you down for so long. It's been bringing down your mental health, your resilience, your discipline. And so the point that you're at your weakest is the point that you have to really scrap and fight and face this difficulty. And yes, part of the reason it's difficult is because you're at your weakest, but it's also because you've been building the habit for so long. As time goes on and as you keep fighting and the more you start winning, the easier it gets. But also over time, you get stronger and stronger and stronger. And again, yes, it does get easier because you're getting stronger, but it also is getting easier just because you are making progress. The progress in terms of habits. But things also get easier because the habit starts to degrade. It's not as strong of a habit anymore. It's not really an addiction anymore. And so that's the sort of paradox. In the beginning, it is the most difficult. That's when you have to scrap. That's when you have to just not do it even when the feelings and the urges are so strong. In the beginning, that's when it's the most difficult, but that's also when you're at your weakest. And honestly, when you look past all the strategies, even though they can help you and there's so many different ones, what you have to do is just force yourself not to do it. Fight the urges, go outside, just do anything else other than put the marble in this yes category. And when you start doing that and putting the marbles in the no category, that's when you start making progress. But that's when it's the most difficult. You just have to do it. You just have to start breaking the habit. And it's not going to be easy. That's just how it is, unfortunately. And so for the last part of this video, I'm going to talk about the only way that you can really win at this. And yeah, I've kind of explained it to you already in terms of habits, putting less marbles into here, saying no more than you say yes. And over time, it will become easier to not do it than it is to do it. And at that point, you've broken the addiction, right? But what does that mean? I'm not really going to talk about strategies right now. There are things that I've done. There's things that I still do, like obsessing over self-improvement and purpose and having things to do all the time and optimizing your online environment and all this different stuff, right? But these strategies all are trying to help you basically do this one simple thing. And what this really is, what these jars, these glasses, these habits really are, is just a change in identity. Because fapping kind of becomes part of your character, like who you are. When you do it so much, you build up this habit, you have this perception of, I am an addict, I'm addicted to porn, I'm a fapper, I'm someone that struggles with NoFap. And so you build up this idea of who you are. It becomes a part of your identity. And the whole process of breaking the habit and building this up and saying no more than yes is you changing your identity. Because once you get to the point where it's easier to not do it than it is to do it, you've changed your identity. You now believe that you aren't someone that faps anymore. You don't watch porn anymore. Maybe you make a mistake, whatever, every couple of months, whatever, but you're going to be free, and you basically are already free. You have broken the addiction. You don't ever have to think about NoFap. That's what you have to get to. That right there is how you win. Forgetting about NoFap. And I know it sounds kind of weird because you're like, oh, but I just found out about it. I think about it so much. Like, I really need to start working on this. But this is another paradox of NoFap. Right when you start, you think about it the most. It's always in your head. You're like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? And that causes you to actually relapse a lot more, causes you to think about it so much and to obsess over it. But over time, as things get easier, you think about it less because it's easier not to do it. the habit becomes easier not to do. So over time, you do it less, but you actually think about it less. You don't think about it more. It becomes more second nature not to do it. And when you've fully broken the addiction, fully broken the habit, you don't do it at all anymore, that's the point where you literally never think about it at all. Every single day, you have no thoughts in your brain about fapping, about porn, or even about NoFap. It's all just out of your head. It's out of your mind. It's not a part of your identity anymore. It's not who you are. So all the strategies on NoFap, all the work that you put in, all the fighting that you do from day to day, it's all to get to the point where you believe fully in yourself that you are not someone that does it anymore. And once you fully believe that you aren't someone that faps, that you're not someone who watches porn, then you aren't going to do it. You aren't even going to think about it at all because it's a part of your character. A good example of this, because this applies to other habits. This is really a video about habits, because that's what fapping is and what watching porn is. When you look at it in the most simplest term, it's just a habit that you've been building. That's it. It's not this complicated thing. It's like, yeah, whatever, addiction. All these words just lead back to habit. It's just a habit that you're trying to break. And that's what NoFap is, trying to break the habit of fapping and watching porn. That's what it is. So like I said, a good example of getting away from a habit by making it not a part of your identity is with, for me, scrolling and also playing video games. I literally never think about playing video games or scrolling. Every single day, I have literally no thoughts about it. There's none in my head that I want to go play video games, that I want to go play Overwatch or scroll on TikTok. I have literally no thoughts about that. And the reason is because after so many days, I've just put it into the no category. I've strung together so many days and I've constantly told myself that I don't do those things anymore. That's not a part of my identity. And so that became true. And right now I fully believe it. So like when you fully believe it, you don't do it anymore. But getting to that point is the hard part, because in the very beginning, it's so hard to believe what you tell yourself, that when you say, I'm not a fapper, but every single day you relapse, it's so difficult to actually believe it. But when you string together so many days, and the streak is kind of powerful, but not actually thinking about it, the more days that you can string together before you relapse, the farther you get away from the habit. Because I haven't played video games or scrolled in a very, very long time. Yeah, maybe a couple times I scrolled for a little bit, like 10 minutes, or maybe sometimes I played video games a little bit with my friends when they were over, but for the most part, I've basically never done it after I said I was done, after I said I was gonna quit. And I know for me, these things were easier to quit, and they weren't really like addictions compared to watching porn and fapping, compared to how that was for me. But they were still habits that I had built up for such a long time. This is really the only way to win. It's so much easier to have this visual and explain it in simple terms, in terms of habits. NoFap is a day-to-day battle. In order to break the habit, you need to win more days than you lose over a long period of time. And as time goes on, your identity starts to shift. You start to believe that you aren't someone that faps anymore. You start to believe that you aren't someone that watches porn anymore. It becomes a part of your identity, who you are. And at that point, over a long period of time, when you finally get there, where you fully don't believe, it's a part of your identity that you're not someone who faps. It's a part of your identity that you're not someone that watches porn. You just don't do it. When you get to that point, you will never think about any of this again. I hope you understand more about NoFap and how it's just a habit. You know, now that I've explained some of the pitfalls, I hope you don't track your progress in terms of the streak and you actually know what real progress looks like. I really hope that this video helped you, and the reason why I created this video is to help everyone who is struggling on NoFap, that is just feeling like things are so complicated and they just aren't getting better. Because the way I explained it and the things that I went over in this video, I really do hope that things will be simpler for you, that you now have a better understanding of just the addiction, the habit itself, of NoFap itself, and you can go forward with a better plan and actually know what you're doing. And as always, bro, never stop improving. You'll be grateful for later.